Hey, everybody. Hope you're having a great week. It's Tuesday devotion, and hope you enjoyed the weekend and the service Sunday at the fairgrounds, and hope you really enjoyed that. I did. It was I want to say it was a tough weekend for me. If I kind of avoided you Sunday or didn't speak much, it was a hard weekend for me. Um, don't know. Don't know if I've ever really had a day hit me as hard as that as Father's Day did this year. It was kind of a tough weekend for me. I looked around. I seen so many other people, right there within our church family that I know was probably feeling a lot like I was. And I know a lot of your dads have passed or your moms have passed. And you've just went through Mother's Day, and it's hard. I'm just now the second one through that. Probably one of the worst days I've had. But appreciate your prayers and could still use them. And we'll get started here on our devotion going into Peter. One of my favorite books. One of my favorite people, the Bible too. Peter, I compare myself to him a lot. I know I've shared that with you all before. But I hope you caught the pastor's first video, which was out on Monday. And again, he'd done a wonderful job framing everything up and kind of getting it started. You see here, I've got on the screen it's kind of broken up here of what. It'd help if I do it full screen. I know, but it's kind of broken up here, and it shows the chapters and the titles, kind of the different themes that we're going to be looking at here, the different things. And so tonight or today on Tuesday, we're going to look at the first 9 verses of 1 Peter chapter 1, and it's going to talk about suffering and the security of believers. So we'll get into that here in just a second. And, our pastor talked about the author, of course, is Peter, and he's writing this letter. And he's writing this letter, and the purpose behind this is he's writing this. And he talked about a few different things. One, he wanted to encourage the believers, but he wanted to remind them, and you see this in the very first verse, that he wants to remind them that they're strangers. They're different from this world, and he wants to remind them and encourage them of what they have to look forward to, and encourage them through this suffering. Is the other thing that he wants to do. There's suffering going on, and I hope you watched video 1 with the pastor. If you didn't, you need to go back and watch it before you go into the rest of these, because he talks about even there and where they're at here and in Rome and Nero persecuting the church and how much support he had with that, and burning the Christians and all those things. And he explains some of that. So they're really going through a time of suffering, and Peter's going to encourage them. And man, if anybody can be an encourager, Peter can, right? My last message a couple weeks ago talked about him having a renewed passion and jumping out of the boat and swimming to Christ. So in the suffering tonight, and it's broke up here in different parts that you'll see in the suffering, but tonight we're going to look at hope and hope in the suffering. So I hope you can pick that out. I'm going to share that with you. And we're also going to look at grace in the very second verse here. We're going to look at God's amazing grace and what He gives us. I like the quote in the devotion in our YouVersion app. I like the quote in there that it says, "Faith is just a church word until we actually have something on the line." I thought that was a pretty good little quote there. Faith is just something. It's just a church word until we actually have something on the line. When your faith actually gets stretched a little bit, I like to use that word, stretched, on our faith, and to grow in that. And then it also talked in the app, in the devotion there, about how valuable is our faith. Man, how much value does God put in our faith? And it is unreal. just the value. And Peter stresses that. Peter stresses that as he's encouraged them here through their suffering. He really stresses the value of their faith. So we'll start reading here in verse 1. Excuse me. It says, Peter, an apostle of Jesus Christ, to the strangers scattered throughout. So he's talking to the church here. He's talking to the Gentile believers, and they're scattered. They're in all these different places. He says through Pontus and Galatia and Cappadocia, Asia, and Bithynia. I think's the way he pronounced it. I can't remember now. Elect according to the foreknowledge of God the Father through sanctification of the Spirit unto obedience and sprinkling of the blood of Christ. And look here already, grace unto you and peace be multiplied. Grace unto you and peace be multiplied. So as he starts out this very first thing, number one, in the very first sentence, he's calling them strangers. And he wants them to see that they're different than this world. But then at the end of that, in verse 2, he's already saying, all right, here you go. A daily dose of grace. And grace unto you, and peace be multiplied. And then he says, blessed be the God of our Father, Lord Jesus Christ, which according to his abundant mercy hath begotten us again. And the pastor talked a little bit about that in the first one, and being born again, and begotten us again. And look here. Look at the last part of this verse 3. Unto a lively hope. A lively hope. That is a hope that is not dead. That is living. A living hope. And how is it living? And look at the way he ends the verse. By the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. And so many times I am guilty as all get out, as they say. I am guilty of sometimes thinking there's no hope, right? We get sometimes as Christians that we just get the worst look on our face. We have the worst attitude that nothing is going right. It's all going downhill. There's no hope. Things are not going to get better. But Peter's telling them here, with Christ, with you being born again, with you asking Christ in your life and you being born again, there is a living hope. There is a living hope, and that is made by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. That offers us a living hope that's still alive. Okay, look what he does here in verse 4. He says, to an inheritance. Inheritance, and I underline that. We have an inheritance from God. We are joint heirs with Christ, right? So he says to an inheritance, and then look what he says about it. That's incorruptible and undefiled, and it fades not away. It fades not away. And sometimes I think we as Christians, we get caught up and we see things that get worse and they get bad, and this hope starts to fade. We kind of think that all of our inheritance is fading. We think that hope is starting to fade away, and it's not. The things that God has promised us, and with his grace, it's incorruptible, it's undefiled, and it fadeth not away, and it's reserved for us, reserved in heaven for you. Man, Peter is, before he ever does anything, he's really encouraging them. He's wanting to stress to them that the promise of their salvation is what it's going to give them. Who are kept by the power of God, verse 5, through faith unto salvation. There it is. He's trying to encourage them with that. Who are kept by the power of God, not us, not anything we can do, but by the power of God through our faith unto salvation, and ready to be revealed at the last time. And the reward for our faith and the home that we have, the inheritance we have, to be revealed in the last time that we will get to see. Verse 6 says, wherein ye greatly rejoice. Greatly rejoice. And I like that verse. And in Matthew 5:12, and it goes through all the Beatitudes, but it ends in 5:12, and it says, rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven. And it's the same thing Peter is saying here. Rejoice in that. The last thing he just told them here, that through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time, reserved in heaven for you. So then he says, wherein. So in that, greatly rejoice. though now for a season, if need be, ye are in heaviness through manifold or diverse or different temptations and the things that come our way. So we can greatly rejoice for our reward in heaven. We can greatly rejoice because of the grace that God has given us. We can greatly rejoice. We can rejoice in suffering. Okay. And you're sitting there and you think, you're like me, right? You think, man, it's easier said than done, Jody. Yeah, it is. It's so hard sometimes because the reason is we focus more on the problem. I spent the last 3 days focusing on just how sad that I was that I missed my dad. That was my focus. I was overcome with that. And it brought a heaviness on me. It brought a heaviness on me that was just, some of you know what that feels like. But Peter's telling them here, greatly rejoice, because just for a season, though now for a season, a short time, seasons come and seasons go. And for a short time, if need be, you're in heaviness. But look what he says here. This is the best part about it. You want some encouragement? This is what Peter's giving them. That the trial of your faith, when it gets tested, when that the trueness of it, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, though it be tested, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ. So I ask you at the start, how valuable is your faith? Much more precious than gold. Much more precious than gold. We have so much to rejoice about and be encouraged about. And I understand. I get it. I get that way too. But we have so much to rejoice about. We have so much to be thankful for. We have so much to praise and honor God for. Verse 8 and 9, the last two, it says, whom having not seen ye love, in whom, though now ye see him not, yet believing, ye rejoice with joy unspeakable and full of glory. Just by God's grace daily that he gives us, that he bestows upon us, that is enough to rejoice with joy unspeakable and full of glory. Receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your souls. And Peter's reminding them all the way through this. You know what? What was the first thing he called them? What was the first thing he called them in verse 1? Strangers. Remember, we talked about that. We talked about that being one of the themes to hold on to throughout this book in Peter's writing. And he talks about them being strangers. And the reason why he can give them so much joy here is because they are strangers, because they are different than what this world is. They are different from what this world has to offer. Receiving the end of your faith. And he talks about salvation through there and the reward of heaven. And it's so much that we can be thankful for. I hope you got something out of this that will encourage you a little bit. I tried to squeeze it down a little bit and not be so long. But I love you guys. And I hope you have a great week. I'm praying for you and you be praying for me. I love you.